Hey class, I've got a video for you today. We're going to go through a lot of stuff and I'm going to try to walk you through creating an outline and some details on your simple sketch that you did earlier. And I'm going to go through the difference between vector and raster graphics, and I'm going to give you a little tutorial on basics of working with Adobe Illustrator. So let's just start this off right away. We're gonna Adobe Illustrator right down here, and you just click on it. And if you don't have it installed, you gotta install it first. But so basically, I'm gonna show you a little bit about vector as opposed to raster graphics. Okay, so this is this little herring that I've drawn. And if you notice when I zoom in on it, and here's a little tip for you. If you use the command key and hit plus, you can zoom in forever and ever and ever. You see all those little scales is zooming in. If you hit command and 0, it'll return to the full screen. So that's what this little guy looks like in vector graphics. Here's a Photoshop version of him. And all I did was saved it and opened it in Photoshop. And you can adjust the resolution, but the same thing, command plus allows you to zoom in and see it's looking pretty good. And then you start to see it, right? So look how, I'll go back one. See how it starts to pixelate? That's the difference. The vector graphics is drawn with entirely with mathematical equations, and the raster is just pixels shoved together, and the more pixels the better the resolution, but also the bigger the file size. So the reason people would like to use Illustrator is basically to be able to zoom in or zoom out or resize things or reshape things really easily. Okay, so for this assignment, what you're going to need to do is you're going to go to new file, because you don't have anything probably yet. And we can do it a bunch of different ways because we're going to be sharing it on the web. You could use a web size or whatever, but let's just start with print in case you do want to print some of these things. And we'll go to letter, and you want to check your orientation. Like if your picture is horizontal, maybe make it horizontal. If it's vertical, make it vertical. Let's work in inches just so we all know what we're working with. This is letter size here. And since my picture is indeed horizontal, I'm going to switch it over. And when you're doing a print for clients and stuff, you'd want to do CMYK because that's what they use for printing. Whereas for our purposes, most of the time we're just going to want to use red, green, and blue, or RGB. And so you click on that and it's just telling me, hey, wait, this is print. You don't need that, but it's fine. And we're going to go create. And there you have it. This is basically what this looks like when you first start off. So you're going to have this big white space, and this is called your artboard. And up here is your little header, like in most programs. And window, you can click on, you can get different kind of stuff for your workspace in here. File, of course, you can do all kinds of other things, object, blah, blah, blah. And over here on this side is your tools that you can pick and play with. And over on this side are your properties, your layers, and your libraries. So we're all kind of in the same boat. I'm going to go here to window and go to workspace, and I like the Essentials Classic. That is kind of what I'm used to working in. You notice when you go to this workspace, there's all these different ones. Like if you were doing, say, tracing, which we are doing, you can go to that one and you can experiment with all these things. And if you don't like them, you can just go reset and blah, blah, blah. You'll be back to where you were. But the nice thing about Essentials Classic, it has this little bar already set up top, which allows you to have a little more access to more stuff up here. And what we're going to do for this first thing is we're going to go to File, and we're going to go down to Place. And whenever you want to stick like your sketch or something into a picture, this is where you'll go. You hit place, and it'll immediately go to where you last were. And so I think this is the one. Yeah, okay, place. And you can click anywhere on there and then drag it out, and it will drag out in proportion your sketch. And you just let go when you're done dragging. You can notice like this artboard is way bigger than my sketch. So this is a great example where I can click on the artboard, and these two tools here, I'm just going to jump over here for a second. This is called the selection tool, or the shortcut is V. And so you'll be using this one a ton. They call it the black arrow. And this one is the direct selection, or the A is the keyboard shortcut. And so between these two, anytime you're like doing something you want to, you want to be in a different area, you click on the white space with this black tool, or you hit V and you click off of it, then it makes sure it's unselected. When you click on it, you'll notice it's selecting this image right now, right? So by clicking off of it, that allows me to get to the artboard area, and I can go to edit artboards. Now, this is an important thing to think about. Artboards can be edited at any time. So you can make them bigger if you want. You can make them smaller if you want. Anything you want to do to them. So you can see my image here, I'll click on it, is actually bigger than the artboard, but there's just a lot of blank space. But if I want to print this stuff out here will just never get the printed area is what's actually on the artboard. So that's a good thing to know. So you can, in Illustrator, you can do all kinds of stuff out here in the workspace around the artboard, and then drag it into the artboard. And sometimes people like to do stuff like that. Anyway, so we've edited the artboard to be closer to the size that we're working with. And that allows us to then, if you go Command 0, it'll make it as big as it can for the screen so you can see better. And remember, the keyboard shortcut Command plus zooms in, Command negative zooms out. And I'm saying Command if you're on a Mac. It would be different if you're on a PC, but you should know that by now. Anyway, so basically, we're going to jump right in to working on this. And what you're going to need is you're going to need your layers. And you notice here it doesn't show layers anywhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to Window, and we're going to click on Layers. And it'll open up this little box here that says Layers. And you can move, this is the cool thing about this, you can move this into here and it'll link, and then when you double click on it, you've personalized your board. That's one of the first personalizings that you'll do. And so this layer that we're on, we're going to name it, there's a couple ways to do this. You could, I think, click over here and you can call it a template over here, right? And it will actually dim it part way. Did you notice that? And if you want to undo something, Command Z, and it'll just undo it. So it's kind of the same as anything. But it's really a nice thing. If you do template, it locks it and it dims it. So that way when you're drawing and stuff, you don't mess with your sketch. So that's a really good way to do that. You can also name it template, which will help you know what your layers are. And it's always good practice to know what your layers are. And see this little spot I'm hanging out? If you hover over things a lot in this program, it'll tell you what they are. So that's another trick. Click on that, creates a new layer. And this we're going to name Outline. If you're a double clicker like me, these things will pop up sometimes, and it can be annoying. But see, make sure you're on that one. The beauty is this is locked, so we don't have to worry about it. So we're going to shrink that down, and then we're going to jump right into probably the tool that intimidates people the most. I debated on whether we should do this first, but I think it's actually a good way to do it. Now you notice on the corner, there's these little tab things. And if you click on the tab, it gives you all these different choices. This is called the pen tool, and its shortcut, luckily for us, is called P. So if you want to use the pen tool, just use the keyboard and hit P. The pen tool works, and I'll show you an example here, by you click on one point and then you click on another and you have a line. And you always have this thing floating around, hanging off, waiting for your next line. So one way to get rid of that, you know, if you're done, you're like, this is the line I wanted to create, you just click escape and it cuts it off. Now, if you want to continue this line, you click back on that and you see how it keeps going. With the pen tool, if you click and then drag, it makes a curve. And so I can kind of, let me do something here. See, right now it's showing me the line, but when I click off of it, you'll notice like it kind of disappears for a second. That's because right now I don't have the stroke set. And so if you have a stroke, that's the outline basically of your line. And your fill is the inside of your line. So like if you have a whole shape, a lot of times that's when you'll notice what the fill is. But in this case, we don't really want fill. We're going to click the X here, and that gets rid of fill. And the same could be done with stroke. You can click that X and you get rid of stroke. Stroke also has this ability to change the thickness of it right here, you know, in terms of points. So you can change how thick it is. And I'll show you this one thing, hopefully not confusing you too much. If you double click on this, it gives you these properties of the stroke, which you can change all these different things. Like you can actually create little arrows with it, which is fun sometimes. You can say none. And you can also change the end cap. So I'm going to zoom in. You can maybe see this better if I zoom in. See how this is straight cut off like this? If I go to that little thing and I change the end cap, it makes it round. So that's a good thing if you want, or you can make it like real blunt. And when you really notice this is when you, let's zoom back out just a little bit here. When you go like this, you see how that has like a real sharp edge? If I were to go to the stroke thing and make the end cap like round, it'll change that a little bit. Actually, this one, the corner one, that's the one that changes. Okay. All right, so here we go. Now, let's zoom back out, Command 0. And when you're out of it, you can do the Command 0 and zoom out. So if you want to get rid of this, the easiest way is go to your black arrow, and notice how it's already selected. It knows you want that, and just go delete, and it's gone. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you a couple little tricks here for tracing out the outline. Let's go to our pen tool. You can either hit P and just start at one spot. It doesn't matter where. And you can just click, and you don't even have to make the corners if you don't want to. You can just click straight to these spots. And you can make a case for doing it this way. I think for beginners, sometimes it's better not to worry about the curving, and just to do it straight first. And I'll show you what one technique would be. So you're going to get to this point, and I'm going to zoom in so you can really see it. To connect these together, you want to be right inside that square. If you click here, you're not going to connect. You notice how it's not connecting? When I go here, I get all this like little feedback telling me, yeah, that's it. That's where you want to be. So once you get that, let's zoom out just a little bit. Whoops. There's a couple ways you can deal with the fact that you have all these curves here. You can go to this one tool called the curvature tool. And you can then, let's zoom in a little bit here. you can take that curvature tool and right where there's a curve, you can take it and click on that line, and then you kind of push in with the mouse clicked, you can push it up. So once again, I can take that little curvature tool and I can drag it out, and that allows me to then get these nice curves that I didn't get when I did the original. And one little note, so that's one way to deal with this, is you can kind of see how I can kind of get the neat little flow of the fin there by doing this little so yeah, that's one way to deal with the thing. The other way is with the pen tool to officially do it. And while you're doing this, if you notice like something about your drawing that you want to change, this is your moment to kind of play with it and give it a little life and change it a little bit if you want to. And you know, just kind of pick the point where it's it needs to go out the furthest or needs to come in the furthest, and then drag in from that point. And yeah, there we go. And just kind of fall around, get your whole dynamic. And I'm going to show you another thing once we get this kind of set. Okay, that's pretty good. This looks bad. And this is a real fast way to get these shapes if you want to. You see how I could move that point with that? I can kind of pull these down. Here's a great spot. I need to get that curve going. Little curve here. All right, it's looking pretty good. See, I can drag this point where the curve happens by just kind of clicking on it and dragging it out. So that's another way to play around with these things, is click on the point and drag it. Like I can drag this, whoops, this can happen. So see, this is a good example. Okay, if it starts to go wanky, it's because these are basically the things that allow you to change the direction of the curve. And you want them, if it's a subtle curve like this, you want them pretty much in line with your little dot there. If they get all out of line, you see what happens when they're like at angles to it. You can get these really wild curves, which may be good for some things, but not for others. And the closer they are to the actual thing, the better they are in terms of moving. And okay, I think here's needs some curve. All right, there we go. And there we go. Oh, and here. Okay, so I'm going to show you now the direct selection tool. So we got a basic outline. Right now we got this pretty thick stroke around here. I'm just going to take this down so it's a little smaller, a little less obnoxious. And I'm going to show you the direct selection tool over here. And this is, as I said, the A tool. And the A tool is kind of what I was doing with the curvature tool. You can do with the direct selection tool. So you can click on a point and you can move that point. The difference being that it doesn't make a new point. Whereas the curvature tool is literally making a new point every time I click in a spot, which can be annoying if you don't know what you're doing, or even if you do know what you're doing, you can really make a mess of your thing. So notice how I can like kind of alter these points by moving them. This is what makes drawing with vector graphics so cool, is that even after you've drawn your line, you can make these adjustments to your line. And like here, if you click on this, it'll show your little anchor tools. And so you can change your little anchors by just clicking on that and then moving these little angle anchors. All right. And you can kind of adjust that. There we go. Let's zoom out and take a look at the situation. Now, when you have a whole shape and it's completely closed, they call it, you can then do a fill into that shape. But you won't be able to see your drawing very well. So what I suggest doing at this point is we'll do one more layer, and we're going to call this color, right? And we're going to then take this outline layer, right? And we are going to copy it. So you need to make sure you're on the black arrow, and then you're going to click on this, and that selects all the stuff you made, right? If you were to drag it, you'd see it. See right here, we have this new shape we created. So we're going to take this and we're going to click on this line because that's our path. And using the black selection tool, the V tool, we're then going to make a copy by going edit, copy, and then we're going to go up here to color. We're going to click on that one, that little spot, so make sure we're in there. And then we're going to go edit, paste in front, and that'll keep it in the same spot where we want it. So when we click on this outline and take it off, you'll see we still have that outline up here. And since this is the colors, we're not going to really need a stroke because we don't really need to see it. So make sure you got the color clicked on, and then you're going to go over here to stroke, and you're going to just click on this little square thing and click no stroke, right? And it'll still show it, and we're going to then go to fill, and we're going to decide to do a color. And you can see now this whole thing has one color in it. Most of the time, you might not want just a straight fill color. You might want to play with the gradient. So one of the things you can do is you can then click on your fill colors, and there'll be these kind of like default gradients. Like here's one that's white and black. That's one of your default ones. You know, there's a blue one for sky. Let's say you start with this white and black one. Then you can go to your gradient tool over here, and you can then play with this by changing the angle of the gradient. You can change the length of the gradient so it's more intense. You can also kind of click on your object and then make the gradient that way so that, you know, it's in the direction of what you're trying to do. And this is a pretty sweet tool in terms of you know, making it shade like almost automatically the way you want it. And this allows you to kind of move it around up and down. If you double click on one of these, then it gives you the option to change the color and play around with it that way. It also allows you to change the opacity of it by, you can either change it that way, or you can actually go in and type in like 50%, and then it's less opaque and you can see through it still a little bit. So this is really nice for when you want to do lots of different color layers and get some subtlety going. You can double click on this one. Instead of it being pure white, you can kind of like, you know, change it to a little yellow. And then you can also kind of like brighten it up this way if you want, and that'll make it whiter, or you know, so there's a lot of different ways to adjust color. This one, instead of being so opaque, we can do the same thing. We can take this down to like 30% or something. 30 and hit enter. Okay, so with that done, use the little selection tool to get out of it, and that's always that's a nice trick. And I'm going to show you really briefly. We're going to create another layer, So we got our color layer, our outline layer, and our template layer. And now we're going to create the details. And these are going to just be the little lines within this. And there's a bunch of different tricks here, but one of the ones I want to show you with the pen tool, so we got the pen tool and we showed you earlier, you can kind of click on it and you get to a corner and you just click and drag the direction you want. You know, if I want my curve to go this way, I drag this way. And I want it to go this way, I kind of, you know, you'll figure out it's like backing up a car. And you can see right here the fill is on. So I'm going to go over here so you can see it and hit escape and see how it just cuts the line off. I'm going to take stroke and I'm going to click on that and I'm going to get rid of the fill, and then I just have a line. And this line is then the same as that stroke thing. I can do all kinds of different things to it. And I'm going to show you this. A lot of times having the end not be so sharp is people like it, and they like it when the curve's kind of off. But the other thing that's really nice is you can change, let me zoom in. You can change what the line looks like. You see here, it's like totally even. One of the, you know, they have all these, if you click on that stroke and you go down here, there's all these different kinds of preset lines that are in here. So you can, like in this case, I could click on this and you see how that just tapers the ends. And a lot of times that may be something you want. You may want, you know, kind of like a more organic one, or you may actually want to have, you know, one end tapered and the other end not tapered. And it's all about the direction you drew it. Like if you came from here to here, that'll be the fat end and this will be the skinny end. And so if you want to change that, you can flip it. So that's a kind of neat little thing with these lines. Go back to your direct selection tool, boom, you got a line. If you want to duplicate a line, like say I want a bunch of these lines, I can hit Option while I have this thing selected and drag it out. And I can have that same line happen twice. And then I can actually take my direct selection tool and I can tweak this line if I click on it. This will happen to you a lot. If you click kind of over here and you think you're clicked on it, no, you're not. So just really make sure you click on that, and then you can change this line around after you've, you know, moved it. And once again, here's these little handles which allow me to change the curvature of it. So that can be a quick way of go up here. You can just kind of like make duplicates of lines and then tweak them after you've made them. And unfortunately, I will say that sometimes I go, God, you know, it's a lot of work. It'd be easier just to draw these manually, you know. And that's another option you have, is just to, you know, not, So anyway, one thing that you'll notice is if you do the option, right, and you drag this thing to create this line, right, and I let the option off first, I haven't really copied it. But if I drag it and let my mouse off first but keep my option down, then I'll get the second line, if that makes any sense to you all. So anyway, you're going to want to just kind of like go through and draw these out. There's the other tool is the pencil tool, which is, where is it? In here, pencil tool. And the nice thing about the pencil tool is you just basically kind of draw more organically. So if I click and then just hold my mouse down, I can draw just, you know, like that, and it'll make a line. So click, hold your mouse down, and that allows you to make a line. The bad thing about this is you'll notice like here, I haven't connected these two lines together. They're just kind of like close, but you don't notice it until you're, so you might have to take your direct selection tool and kind of blend those together. If you want to change the dynamics of it, you double click on the actual thing over here, and it'll allow you to change what's called the fidelity. You can make it more accurate, which will make it read every single one of your little things, or you can make it super smooth if you want to, like, you know, try to make your circles a lot cleaner. You can also close the paths when they're close. You can edit selected paths, which is kind of cool. It can be a problem sometimes, and you can say okay when you've made changes to it. Let's zoom back out. And similar to all these other things, if you want to select one of these, you can go to the stroke and you can change the quality of the line. And this way you'll see, according to how you made it, it'll kind of change the thickness. I'm going to show you one other tool that'll kind of be fun for you to play with. There's this tool called the width tool. And if you click on this, there's all these interesting tools within this. The width tool allows you to change the width of a line. So anywhere you see this little dot, I'm going to zoom in for you. That little dot is basically traveling along the path of this line. And if I do it at the end of this line, I can make it wider at the end, or I can make it really narrow at the end. And then I can travel on this line and say, like, right in here, I can kind of start to widen it out. And then I can be like, you know, I want to start to narrow it down there. Okay. And then Command 0, zoom out again, look at the whole situation. Okay, there we go. And all right, so we're getting started. The other thing you can play with is you can use what's called the shape tool. So basically the shape tool has all these different, you know, preset shapes, which you can do different things with. The rectangle tool you'll use a lot, and the ellipse tool is what we're going to use right now. So if you click on the ellipse tool, or in this case it's L for ellipse or just lips, and let's zoom into the eye. I'm going to show you a cool trick. Like if you want to get a perfectly round thing, you figure out where the center of that round thing is, and you go shift. If you want it to come out of the center, you hit option while dragging, and it will come out exactly where you put it. And then you let go, and we're going to take this stroke way down because we don't need much of a stroke there. And in this case, we're going to give it a fill black, just to, and then we're going to actually do one more. Remember that idea of using the shift and option. If you know where the center is, you can just kind of pull it out. And then shift, if you hold shift in while resizing, it'll keep it proportioned. And we're going to do this one with a little white, give it a little white eye, and then we go, every time you want to get out of something, go to that little selection tool and click somewhere else, and you don't want that. So you hit the selection tool and you're out of that. Anyway, this should give you some stuff to work with and play around with at least, and go from there. The kind of trick to coloring stuff is you go to this color layer, and we're going to just lock the details. These little lock things are great for, you know, if you don't want to accidentally move your thing like I did. You just kind of lock them, and when you're in color mode, then you can say draw. Let's get rid of the fill right now. You can draw like this little splotch here. You can then do a fill in it, And let's just, we'll use this. You can kind of see it. And that allows you then to your gradient tool, and you can then see that thing shows up. You can then change your colors. And voila. You can get your selection tool out, and you can actually then change these little shapes around to fit these. And if you need to adjust that curve, remember your little curvature tool. And the A tool allows you to pull these out. If you click on it and it moves like that, that's because you didn't actually get the individual spot as well. And this is a good example right here. See how this kind of crisscrosses? It's because it got all twisted. And so see, I can kind of like pull that anchor point in there and adjust that weird twist that I created accidentally. So we got that. The beauty of this color layer, whatever's on top is going to be on top. So if I want to go, I can make a copy of this, and I can use that option button, and I can move it, you know, to a different spot and adjust it, which is kind of cool. And that's one way to play with coloring. Another little cool trick to do is you can take this other tool we were talking about earlier called the blob brush. And the thing about the blob brush is it creates a whole shape as you brush with it. So if I wanted to like fill this entire shape with a color, and I'm just going to do a whole new layer called blob brush here. Okay. And I'm going to lock that for time being. So we're in the blob brush only. And you'll see this, if you, here, I'll zoom in for you. You see that little circle around the brush? That's the size of the brush right now. If I were to make a brush mark, that's the size of it. So if I want that bigger, there's these brackets kind of just below the delete button. If you do the bracket that goes to the right, it'll get bigger. Bracket to the left, smaller. So sometimes it's nice to have, with this particular tool, a big brush. And if I just kind of go like this, that creates this whole shape, right? So I can kind of, and if I do that into it, see how it widened that shape out all the way out to there? And that shape, I can then change the fill. And one way to change, this is, I'm giving you billions of things, is to hit the eyedropper tool. And the shortcut for the eyedropper tool, which is right here, is I. So if you're in a tool, the easiest thing to do is just flip to I, and I can click here, and it will steal the gradient I have here and stick it there. So if I want that gradient, I can just steal it from, you know, and if I want this gradient, for instance, I can click here and it'll steal the gradient from over here that we had. So that's a really great, use the eyedropper tool if you want to. All right, let's lock that and go back to our blob brush. The cool thing about the blob brush and having all this other stuff locked is that then you can use the eraser tool and you can reshape. See how I can kind of erase that corner and it just change. It's actually like pen tool in reverse. And the beauty of all this is that with the selection tool, it's a shape. And so now I can actually, I can adjust this whole shape and place it into things if I want. Anyway, that's good. Command 0, see the whole picture. You can kind of see what happens if I adjust this shape here. And I can kind of use it to fill stuff with in different ways. And you can layer shapes just upon each other. Like, you know, if I did another brush blob brush thing. And over here, I can kind of like layer it next to it and just kind of and change the fill if I want to say white. You know, you can kind of see what would happen or whatever, you know, I wanted to do with that. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that because that's a really nice tool for, you know, using the eraser tool then to shape it again. And we'll just zoom in. You can see the effect of using the eraser tool to shape. I can just kind of like come in there. Oh, I have to have it selected. Sorry. Select it. And then get the eraser tool out. And then, there you go. The only problem with this method of working is you'll get these weird artifacts sometimes where you don't erase something perfectly. And you can see here, I'm getting rid of that spot from the blob tool. So that can be a little cumbersome. Select and then get to the eraser tool. But one of the cool things you can do with the eraser tool is you can just cut through and create these little segments, which I love doing. And then each one of these segments becomes something you can then, if you unclick it, you can then move them around and change where they're located. See that? Because then they become free of that original blob tool shape. So that could be a neat way of creating, you know, lines and stuff and playing around with it. So in a nutshell, let's zoom back out and we'll close this layers thing so you can see. You've got your, we went over a lot of stuff and you'll see there's tons of little lines. And so you're going to be drawing a ton of little lines here. And one last trick I want to show you, let's get back to the details section. Lock the blob brush and we're going to go into the details. Is that once you make a line, and we got this line now, and remember we got fill, so we want to get rid of fill and we want to have a stroke, and what we want is not that but the dark line. If you have your thing selected, option and drag allows you to make a copy. So if you need to make lots of copies, and then Command D, and that makes a ton of lines, which then I can kind of adjust each one of these lines that way. And that's one way of making, if you need to make a ton of little lines. And if you need to get rid of something, you can just select the whole shebang and go click, and that gets rid of it. If you just delete all those lines at once. Go through there and click your pen tool and practice getting those curves happening, and practice hitting escape when you want to get a new line in. Escape. Escape. I like to kind of drag it out so I can see it when I'm doing escape. It does help. So once you get all those lines in, you can then select them all, and you can do that wonderful trick with the non-uniform stroke. And we're going to want this, and since we did them the one way, we're going to actually want it the other way. No? Yeah, it looks pretty good. I like that. So sometimes you just got to kind of experiment with what looks good. And there we have these little lines started. So that's that. You got the you figure out how to do lines. There's a ton of little lines to do. Try to keep your layers organized. You have your outline, your template. If you ever want to not see what your template is, these are your the eyeball. If you click that off, you'll see what you got going. and just keep plowing away at the details that happen as you go through this. And you've learned the blob brush. You've been able to see how to use the pen tool and how to manipulate and do an outline. And for this assignment, if we just get to the point where we have a good outline and some colors thrown in, that's pretty good. You can, believe it or not, you can spend hours dialing this whole thing in. I'm going to show you one last thing before we go, just to kind of give you something to think about. We're going to do another layer, and we are going to stick this layer. It'll automatically stick the layer on top, but we're going to drag it all the way down. We're going to drag it down to the template layer, and we're going to use the rectangle tool, and we're going to draw a shape out over the whole thing. And we're going to put some fill in there, just a humble gradient. And you can see it went over the template, Command 0. Get me back out of this, Command 0. And let's shrink this down. So it kind of colored the template, but it gave the whole background a color, which is pretty fun to have when you're working, to be able to see color for your whole background. And if I go to save this for the class and want to export it, I go to Export and Export As, and then name it, herring. And it'll automatically export as a PNG unless you change this here, and you can do different stuff with it. But PNG works great. And you're just going to say Use Artboards. And in this case, we only have one artboard, so the range is perfect. And I'm going to, because I have other ones, I'm going to name this 5 just for the fun of it. And I'm going to export it. And it'll show you kind of what it's going to look like a little bit here in the thing, whether you, and in this case, we're going, okay, yeah, let's just export this. And then easily you can load that up into the class by just, taking that and doing insert image. So there you have it. And hopefully these steps will help you. And it's pretty cool if you can just jump right into using the pen tool, what that'll give you in the future, because you'll be able to just leap forward and not have to do all this other stuff. But you can see the advantages of being able to zoom in and just have these clear compared to the template, which has all that. You can see the clarity of these lines here, and how cool that is. Okay. And I'll talk to you more later, and there'll be a bit of a step-by-stepper in the lesson plan. Okay. Bye.